Well, let's see how the flanger works, the built-in flanger, which is part of the three classic modulation effects, studio modulation effects, the chorus, the flanger, and the phaser, which are the chorus and the phaser we cover in other videos. So here I have a drum loop loaded from the built-in pack, built-in drop. If you have Ableton 10 Suite, you can download it for free. Let's check this out. Let's load the flanger. We can already hear what it's doing. So a flanger uses two parallel delays that are being modulated to create these flanging effects. Now, first of all, I'm going to turn down the LFO, and this is actually creating the modulation in time, but let's just hear what it does. Nice, now we stopped hearing that type of movement that we heard because of the LFO modulation. Here we have a high-pass filter, which will high-pass the two parallel signals. And if we bring it up, we can only filter it up to 5,000. Let me bring it all the way down. Here we have the dry wet knob, of course, to mix between the dry signal, the non-affected, and the wet full effect. Here in this XY controller, we can control both the delay time and the feedback amount. So let's take everything down. Right now we don't have any modulation, so it's static. Let's listen to what it does. Here's the delay time. Sounds almost like a kind of a bandpass or a collection of bandpass comp filters. They're sweeping, and we can also take the feedback. Part of the signal will get feedback back into the input. And we can also change the polarity of the modulated delays, or in this case, they're not modulated. Nice. We have an envelope which will react. It's a detection envelope, so it will react to the volume of the incoming signal. So if I bring it up, more of the loudest signal in this drum beat, which are the kicks, will be affected by the flanger, and the lower signals, the lower volume, like the hats and such, will be less affected. Let's bring it down. Nice, and we can change the attack and release to change the timing of how the envelope reacts to the volume. Excellent. Now let's actually bring back the modulation. This is on by default, the built-in LFO, which is going to modulate the timing of the delays to create all those flanging, those modulation effects. We can change the shape of the LFO. Can even put it on random. Let's go back to like triangle. We can change the rate, the speed of the LFO. We can also synchronize it. Nice, let's tone it down a bit, but let's accentuate actually, just to hear the effect. Nice. Down here we have the phase, and that's controlling the stereo movement between the LFOs. They're relative to each other, so when it's 180, the LFO will be perfectly out of phase. So when one side reaches the peak, the other side reaches its minimum, and we can play around with that to change the left and right channels delays. We can even move it to spin, similar to the auto pan dual LFO. Which will change, which will detune slightly the LFOs relative to each other. Nice. And in synchronization mode, of course, we can also offset the LFOs to be slightly off time, or change the starting point of the LFOs. Excellent. So the flanger is a really great effect to add movement modulation to more static sounds, or if you go with more extreme settings, it will create kind of this bouncy effect. But really great to add movements. And of course, you can always turn down the LFO to use it kind of as a comp filter. Last thing, you can right-click on the title of the device to turn off high quality, which is it's on by default, which will result in a less brighter sound, but also less CPU. It's up to you, it's a very subtle difference.